Jesus predicts betrayal. Okay, that's how we're going to start this. We're reading through the Bible right now. We're reading through the book of John, the Gospel of John, and we're on chapter 13, verses 18 through 30. Okay? And we're reading how Jesus predicts his betrayal. Now, he already suggested it. There were hints, he's already talked about this, but let's but let's look what he says right now. Starting on verse 18 of chapter 13, Jesus predicts his betrayal. I am not referring to all of you. I know those I have chosen. But this is to fulfill the passage of Scripture, "He who shared my bread has turned against me." So this is Judas sharing the bread, stealing money, and going to betray Christ for some silver. Spoilers. I'm telling you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe that I am who I am. Very truly I tell you, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me. And whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me. So, if you're accepting Jesus, you're accepting God the Father. After he had said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, "Very truly I tell you, one of you is going to betray me." So there it is, flat out, one of you of you disciples, one of you 12 is going to betray me. He's not talking around it at all. He is saying this is going to happen. His disciples stared at one another, at a loss to know which one of them he meant. Now, in hindsight, they kind of realized that Judas was stealing their money, and it's like the behavior kind of eventually adds up that Judas will sell you out for some silver. One of them, the disciple who Jesus loved, most people say that's the disciple John who wrote the book of John, was reclining next to him. And I think it probably is, because why not just say the disciple John? No, but he's like, having experienced Christ's love, he puts that forward as himself. Simon Peter mentioned to his disciples, to this disciple, and ask him which one he means. Leaning back against Jesus, he asked him, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus answered, "It is the one whom I will give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish." So this is what he's like saying to John. This might be done a little bit more casually, like close was like, "Hey Jesus, let me in on this." Then, dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. Well, that's interesting. Jesus told him, what you are about to do quickly." But no one at the meal understood why Jesus said this to him. Now, that's kind of curious to me. It makes me wonder if I feel like John is talking outside himself, sort of. I think he might be implying all the other ones didn't. And he might not have said just because he didn't want to. Maybe he didn't want to cause trouble. He wasn't sure, fully aware of all the things that were about to happen. So he may not have ratted out Judas, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that John suspects Judas at this point as being the betrayer, since Jesus, he's like, he's the one who I'm going to give this bread dipped in wine to. Here you go. So he did that, and let's see, since Judas had charge of the money, some thought Jesus was telling him what was needed for the festival, or to give something to the poor. Which is interesting. People are just, most of them figured it's like, oh, this is just like general stuff. We're at a festival. Jesus is like, hey, go get something. It's like, you know what you have to do. As soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out, and it was night. So Jesus predicts his betrayal. He doesn't outright say, hey, Judas, it's you. He doesn't do that. He understands that the crucifixion has to happen. This is part of the method that God is using. So he's like, do what you have to do. And with that, he goes out to get things ready for the betrayal. And for me, this is another interesting thing where we see the human side, we see the human and the godly side of Jesus, because he understands what betrayal is like. A lot of us experience betrayal. A lot of us have had our trust broken in many ways. Now, sometimes those ways are forgivable. Sometimes those ways are more complicated and hurtful, uh, and we don't know how we're supposed to deal with them. In this case, Jesus understands the fuller picture where this is the method that God is going to lead him to be crucified on the cross. So the aspect of him that is God understands that, accepts that, and he doesn't out Judas right away. He doesn't say, it's you. The godly part of him is allowing this to happen, while the human aspect is something that we can relate to, because we know what betrayal looks like. We know what it's like to be hurt by such things. So it's another way that God relates to us, and we can relate to God. So God understands your experiences. And, we may think that things are too complicated. I mean, I know that with a lot of things I'm observing in the world right now, it gets really, really tricky, and I have some really, really big decisions to make. So with that, I can rest assured that these aren't too big for God. God has seen all the angles, and he knows the situation better than I do. So while I'm not sure what's going to happen next or what the opportunities are going to look like here or in the future, I can rest in God, saying that somehow it's covered, and you'll lead me to where I need to be when you need me there. So yeah, let's come together and trust in God. Even though right now we're all very distant and should be distant right now. If you have a pastor who's saying you need to come back to church while this virus is has put us in very unsafe circumstances, uh, go online to a different church. You know, you could check out my church, Grace Bible Church in Bowie, Maryland. Do a Google search, Grace Bible Church Bowie, or you could Bowie, Maryland, or you could find it on YouTube. So um, that's one of many churches that is doing digital services right now, and uh, you can join us there. But but yeah, if you have a pastor say trying to say that you're a bad person for not coming to church when there's this this virus going around, you should you could talk to him, but he there's a lot of questions. It's like, one, you don't seem to care that people are dying because the coronavirus, and two, he's willing to risk your life so you can come and hear him speak at a dangerous time. So that's not loving. So I would recommend staying away from corona churches. If a church is going to be a corona church, stay away from it. And if he's trying to convince you that's a kind of betrayal, I would have to disagree. Not caring about your life is a betrayal to you. If some religious man doesn't care about you and says, "Oh, you're sinful if you don't come out to my church," they don't care about you. So think about whether you should stay at that church. Maybe just go find another one. Maybe you don't. Usually, I would say if you have a relationship in this church, it's best to discuss it. But when you meet something so extreme as the person does not care about your life, it's a good time to leave. Now, if you don't have a Bible at your home, you could check my links below. I have some things here that you can look at, and you'll see some links to Amazon where you could buy a Bible that could be right for you. Or you could go, if you have a Kindle, there's Bibles to purchase. There's a link down there too for that. Or if you just want to look up any number of versions of the Bible, there are many, many you can see for free at BibleGateway.com. So feel free to check all those things out. Links in the show notes. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.